Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Taryn. This is January 9th for Ravnica Allegiance preview season. Well, it's been another day, so let's go over the new Ravnica Allegiance cards that have been spoiled or previewed today. Let's start with Fireblade Artist. It's a 2-mana 2/2 creature human shaman with haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, Fireblade Artist deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Now this might be pretty interesting if we want to go with a black, red, white deck with kind of splashing in some afterlife stuff, or if there are some black cards that have afterlife as well that can slot nicely into a Rakdos deck for drafted and sealed. Not so sure about this seeing much play in standard. This could possibly see play in maybe a standard burn list or a Rakdos burn list of some sort, so could see that in the future, but for now, it's just an alright card in draft and sealed, and we'll kind of leave it at that. Next up, we have Mirror Match here, a 6-mana enchantment. This is a rare. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you've won, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Whoa, these tokens gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the next end step. This is really good, really powerful, and really fun commander. Obviously, this is going to see a lot of brew around play, especially for a Saffron Olive type of player in standard. This is not really going to see that much play in draft. It can definitely win you a game if you continually win coin flips, which is hilarious. But for standard and commander, this is hilarious as well. Definitely going to be in a Gruul list of some sort where it can kind of ramp into this. This is 6 mana, so it is not like ridiculous. Having a 7 mana enchantment is usually where it's at, but 6 mana is not terrible, but it can definitely be a top end bomb for you. Obviously, it's a 6 mana enchantment that does nothing when it enters the battlefield. You have to cast a creature that's a non-token creature as well. So just one of those things where it's like it kind of needs a little bit of a setup, but in Commander, that's where these kind of cards shine. The art on this also looks really cool. Kind of reminds me of like The Last Jedi. Remember that moment with when Rey is on that like mirror thing? That's kind of what I think about for this card. So really cool for standard, really amazing for commander, and will definitely win you games in draft and in sealed. Next up for us, we have the Shark Toe Crab. Wow. This is a 4-mana 4/4 creature, fish, octopus, crab. Lots of things here. Definitely a Simic card. Has adapt for 4, and it's adapt 1. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Shark Toe Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Very interesting effect here. I really do like how it slows down your opponent. It gets larger. It's already a 4/4 for 4, which is also really good just by itself. And its adapt is also pretty good as well. So it's a 4/4 that turns into a 5/5 that taps something down on your opponent's side of the field. So this is definitely a bomb for you in Simic, in draft and in sealed. Definitely going to be seeing a lot of play in that particular format. Also, it's a fish, octopus, crab. What more could you ask for? I'm not so sure about this seeing standard play, but definitely a huge draft and sealed bomb for you in Simic. Next up, we have an artifact here. This is Scabbling Claws, a 1 colorless artifact. You can tap it and target player exiles a card from their graveyard. You can also pay 1 and sacrifice Scabbling Claws, exile target card from a graveyard, draw a card. For whatever reason, I keep looking at this art thinking it's a creature. It's not a creature, it's just an artifact. This is interesting, sort of like a Relic of Progenitus type of effect now in standard. I really like it against a Golgari list as well. Not so sure it's going to see a lot of play since it is just target card each time. So you do get to draw a card off of this for just 1 mana, so it could be a nice little like loop for you if you're in draft and sealed. Probably not going to see much play in that particular format. Going to see a little bit more play in standard, but still, even then, it's not really going to be able to exile an entire graveyard, which is sort of the reason you want these kind of cards, and that's the thing that Relic of Progenitus kind of gives, and this card does not. Moving on for us, we have Font of Agonies. This is a 1 black mana enchantment. Whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies. You can pay 2 and remove 4 blood counters from Font of Agonies, destroy target creature. Wow, this is kind of crazy because it doesn't sacrifice the Font of Agonies here, which is actually like really good. It makes situations like this where you have like destroy spells like this super impactful to the board state. So this being an Orzhov for draft and sealed is quite powerful, and this being a card in standard as well could be quite powerful too. I think the real place this card's going to see play is going to be Commander for sure, because again, all that life loss kind of ability stuff, that's really big in Commander for an Orzhov list or even a Rakdos list, and I think Font of Agonies would be perfect for those style of decks, and definitely will see play in that particular format. But in draft and sealed, if you lose 4, you get to destroy an opponent's creature basically for just 2 mana, and that's not bad. Next up for us, we have a land. This is Harmony Square. It is a land that whenever it enters the battlefield, if you control 2 or more gates, you gain 3 life. It taps for colorless, or you can tap and add 1 mana of any type that a gate you control can produce. So This is interesting because we have a gate that was in Guilds of Ravnica that tapped for any color mana, but it had to be tapped first before it enters the battlefield, or you would have to sacrifice it. So this is sort of a fixed version of that as long as you control a gate. So this could be really good if you have a lot of gates in your deck list in Draft and Seal. This could also just be a colorless land that doesn't really harm you that much, but could possibly in the future, also give you any kind of color land that you have if you have a gate on the battlefield. So it's kind of an interesting way to do this. I like it a lot. It also gives you an upside to gain life as well if you control more than 2 gates or 2 or more gates, which is also pretty good. So good card for Draft and Sealed. Might be in a cool Gates Matters deck in Standard, and definitely a Gates Matters deck. I feel like Commander or Modern might be where that is, but I'm not really sure that's like a more viable strategy. Probably just gonna be seeing play in Draft and Sealed. Next up for us, we have Gates Ablaze. There's another Gate Matters card. This is a 3-mana sorcery. Deals X damage to target creature, where X is the number of gates you control. Simple, straightforward, and of course, if you get into a lot of gates in Draft and in Sealed, this could be a huge kind of removal spell. 3-4 points of damage, probably 2 to 3 is the sweet spot for this. Not terrible, not great. This could also just be a dead card if you get into it in Draft and Sealed because you don't get into a lot of gates. That's also a kind of a downside to this card, but it also means that there might be a Gates Matter deck in Standard that's a bit more powerful than it was before, so I like it for that particular reason. Next up for us, we have Guild Pact Window. This is a 2-mana artifact. Multicolored creatures you control get +1/+1. I was actually talking about this on our Discord. By the way, if you don't know, we have a Discord. The link's in the description. About like a multicolor or anthem effect for multicolor cards, and lo and behold, we got one today. Nice. A Guild Pact Window is really good for you, really powerful, and a lot of really good multicolored like decks. There are a lot of them out there right now, and just a lot of really good multicolored cards in general and Standard. This could also be a really good effect for you in Modern as well, as Modern is kind of home to a lot of kind of multicolored creatures, and I think this would be perfect in something like that as well, and especially getting 4 of these into a deck list is just really great, especially because it's 2 mana for an Anthem effect. That's pretty cheap. Most of the time it's 3 mana and more. 3 to 5 is normally where it's going to be at, but 2 mana for this is perfect. Love this card. Very simple and straightforward, but going to see a lot of play in Standard, probably Modern as well, and Commander. Not so sure about seeing a lot of play in Draft and Sealed unless you just get into a really heavily multicolor inspired deck list for that format. Next up for us here, we have Skewer the Critics. Now this is a card that's going to see Draft and Sealed play, Standard play, Modern play, Legacy play, maybe even Vintage. It's also a common, so it's going to see Pauper play. Skewer the Critics is a 3-mana sorcery with Spectacle for 1 red, which means it gets to deal 3 damage to any target. What? This card is so good. It's so good, it's going to basically warp the format into a mono-red list, mono-red aggro list on MTGRNA, thanks to the best of 1 format. Skewer the Critics is going to probably herald the coming of a new mono-red dominated Standard. That's not great. That's not good at all. I mean, they could obviously ban stuff like Goblin Chainwhirler if they really want to, but they have 8, literally, you have 8 pseudo bolts in Standard right now. You have Wizard's Lighting, and you have Skewer the Critics. That's 8 cards right there in your deck list. Wow, that's insane. And getting off Skewer the Critics is really easy thanks to Vishino Pyromancer, thanks to cards like the Firebrand, the Monkey, the Firebrand, the Pirate Monkey, as well as the Goblin Chainwhirler. So lots of different ways to get off Skewer. You could also go Risk Factor into Skewer. There's just so many ways this card does 3 points of damage for 1 mana. It's kind of insane. This card is legitimately scary. Makes me want to like not play Standard right now because I feel like Mono Red is just going to stomp everything in the format. Yeah, this card is scary. Kind of proceed with caution, and if you're into red or if you're into Rakdos, well, congratulations, you got one of the best cards in the set. That's that common. What? Next up for us, we have Clan Gouldmane. This is a 2-mana 2/2 creature human shaman. You can pay 2, tap it, target creature can't block this turn. You can also pay 3, tap it, target land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still a land. Both of these are really good for Gruul. Also, just being a 2/2 body is okay. Something you're going to get into a lot in Draft and Sealed. Probably not something you want to use that much in Standard. It's a little too expensive, but the 3 mana turn into a 4/4 is not terrible for Standard, so this could see some play in that particular format. But I still think this is a very good card for you in Gruul. Basically every single Gruul card we've seen so far has been amazing, making me think Gruul will be the most powerful like archetype to get into in Draft and in Sealed. But again, we'll have to see exactly what's going to be coming of that format once the full set is out. But so far, man, so good. So much good stuff there. Next up for us, we have Cinder Lash. This is another Gruul card. This is an enchantment, 2 mana. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cinder Lash deals 1 damage to that player. All right. And you can pay 1, sacrifice Cinder Lash, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Cinder Lash deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. Also, a tons of stuff here. Destructive Revelry kind of comes to mind for this kind of card where it kind of destroys something and also does damage, which is very good. But it's also, you know, as soon as they cast a non-creature spell, which is, you know, basically a control deck, it deals 1 damage to them as well. So very good. Very good in Commander because it's a, you know, a board wide whenever an opponent, so that's everybody. Just all around a great card. For 2 mana, this is so worth it for Gruul and a good burn deck. Probably going to see play maybe a Jund list in Standard, maybe a Jund list with that Skewer the Critics card. And any kind of other spectacle card we really like in the format for Standard. I'm not so sure if this will see much play in Draft and Seal. This feels more like a dead card most of the time, but it can be, of course, sacrifice, destroy artifact or enchantment, so it could be kind of considered hate in Game 2. Obviously, that's a best of 1 in Arena, so you're not going to see it there, but in traditional Magic and on paper Magic, you're going to see Cinder Lash probably come in Game 2 if you get into it. Next, of course, we have Dorens Acuity. This is a 3-mana enchantment. When Dorens Acuity enters a battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw a card. Whenever you cast an instant spell during your main phase, you may return Dorens Acuity to its owner's hand. So this is similar to Disinformation campaign that Dimir had. The problem, of course, is that drawing a card and gaining 2 life without making your opponent discard a card is not as good, just flat out. And also having the ability where you have to cast an instant or sorcery during your, or instant spell during your main phase, also not that great. I'm not a big fan of this card, honestly. I feel like the 3-mana draw card, gain 2 life, is fine for this if you want to get into it for Draft and Sealed, but it really kind of pigeonholes your entire deck into working with Dorens Acuity. Obviously, it's a very specific type of ability, so if you want to use, you know, removal on your main phase, you can definitely do that to get this back, but just not great, not great. Obviously, using it multiple times will make it a little bit better in Draft and Sealed, but not going to see any kind of standard play, sadly. Next, of course, we have Orb and Posture. This is a 2-mana creature human rogue, Death Touch, and Afterlife for 1. So, talked about black creatures that had Afterlife. Here is one right here, Orb and Posture. Very good card for us. A 2-mana 1/2 is not terrible, but a Death Toucher means it's going to be really good and be able to trade with something really nice. It also becomes a 1/1 flyer after it dies, so it immediately kills something thanks to Death Touch, and then on top of that, you get a 1/1 flyer. This card is amazing as an uncommon for you in Draft and Sealed. You're always going to get into it if you see it, if you're in Orzhov or if you're in Rakdos. Amazing card all around. Might even see play in a standard deck. Be a weird Orzhov kind of aristocrat style deck for standard. Really think this card is quite powerful in that particular deck list. Next, of course, we have Scorched Mark. This is probably the worst Magma Spray you'll ever see. This is a 2-mana instant. Deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. It's Magma Spray for 1 extra mana. That's not great. Maybe would serve some spots for like a good sideboard thing, but we have Lava Coil for that at the 2-mana slot. It is instant speed, so that is kind of the caveat there, the change. I do like the art on this, but I don't think that it's going to see much play other than just being good removal in Draft and Sealed. Always good removal for that kind of stuff for Draft and Sealed, and probably not going to see any kind of play outside of that. Next, of course, we have Lumbering Battlement. This is a 5-mana creature beast, Vigilance. When Lumbering Battlement enters a battlefield, exile any number of other non-creatures you control until it leaves the battlefield, and then Lumbering Battlement gets +2/+2 for each card exiled this way. So this is kind of interesting because it's kind of sucking up the board state and making a huge threat. It's also 4/5 with Vigilance, so by itself it's a pretty big threat. So on top of that, it's an even massive threat, even bigger threat. So really like this card a lot for that. I think there's some like situations where this could go infinite with some cards. I think Saffronov was kind of tweeting about that on his Twitter, kind of talking about how this could go infinite with certain cards. I do think this is very good, but so far, this is like your main primary bomb for you in white for Orzhov. Very, very good card. Lots of good stuff here. Protects a bunch of creatures, and then when it dies, they all kind of go back on the battlefield as well. So I like that a lot, and I do think this is going to be a really good card for you in Draft and Sealed. Might see some standard play if it kind of works really well with some good enchantments and stuff like that, or good other kind of stuff to go infinite. But we'll have to see what happens when that happens in standard. Next, of course, we have Hero of the Prescient one. Prescient one? I think that's how you pronounce that. It's a 2-mana creature human warrior. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 human creature token. It's also a 2/2. This is very good, very straightforward, sort of like a young Pyromancer type card. Really like this card a lot. I think this card is going to be quite good in an Orzhov list, obviously for Draft and Sealed, and in Standard. Going to be crazy powerful in Standard if you get into enough hybrid color or multicolor cards for the format. This card might see some play in a really cool Modern list as well, as it is kind of, again, sort of a very young Pyromancer kind of card. Really wish the tokens had some form of like lifelink or flying or something like that. They do not, which I guess that's kind of respecting the card in general. So could be more powerful for that. Would love to see this also in Commander. I think this is really good overall for you. Another good white card, another good white rare for us in the format. And again, just love the art on this one as well. They're just knocking it out of the park with these cards so far. Next, of course, we have Priest of Forgotten Gods. This is a 2-mana creature human cleric. You can tap it, sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifices a creature. You add 2 black and draw a card. This is doing a lot of stuff. This is super powerful. I'm not so sure what's going to be like, you know, the implication for draft and sealed. I think this is very good as far as giving you mana, drawing you a card, making your opponent sacrifice stuff. Obviously there's that. I do think this is going to be very good in a commander deck as well. But standard is kind of where I'm kind of like, I don't really know where it's going to fit at in standard. Probably a Orzhov list where you get to sack stuff for free, as well as, you know, trigger afterlife and all that stuff. So that's where I feel like it's going to see the most play in standard. And modern, I'm really interested to see where this is going to see play too. Again, being able to add mana and draw a card and also sacrifice, it's doing a lot of stuff for just 2 mana. And that's really good. And so this feels really powerful, almost kind of overpowered to me. But let me know what you guys think of this card in the comments down below. I feel like this is probably my favorite of today's spoilers or previews, however you want to say that. I think this is a very good card overall. Next up for us, though, we have the Incubation Draw. This is the last card of today so far. I'm sure they have some more coming out by the time this video goes live. It's a 2-mana 0/2 Elf Druid. You can tap it, add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. If Incubation Druid has a +1/+1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type instead. You can also pay 5 and adapt for 3. This is very powerful. This is probably the most powerful adapt card we've seen besides the Salamander yesterday. Very, very good card for Simic. Very powerful in the early game and can be a house in the mid to late game, being a 3/5 that can, you know, of course, tap for 3 separate mana by itself. Very good overall. Gonna see a lot of play in draft and sealed. It's a rare, so you won't see it as much, but I would get into it if you are in Simic. Gonna see a lot of play in standard because this is just a huge powerhouse for you in that format, being able to tap for mana in the early game and being able to tap for even more mana in the mid to late game if you get a counter on it. In an elf deck, maybe like a Pelt Collector style deck, this might see play in that. This might just see play in a Simic counters deck in general. I do think this is probably the most powerful adapt card we've seen so far as being able to ramp you really quickly and being a huge threat on the board state for just 2 mana. Again, just a very good card in general. Love this card. Think it's going to see a lot of play in a lot of different formats. But those are all of the cards for today. I'm sure they're going to be coming out, or some more coming out as this video goes live. But let me know what you think. There we go. In the comments down below. Like the video, of course, if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell icon to be notified when a video goes live on the channel. And of course, after all of these cards come out, I'll start doing a set review, kind of going through every single card, talking about what's good about it, what's bad about it. Maybe even ranking them this time. I haven't ranked them before. And then kind of going from there. And then after that's done, going through a draft and sealed guide and then a pre-release guide. And just, you know, next week is pre-release. If you guys haven't contacted your local game store, make sure to do that as soon as possible to get your name down or get your pre-order in, that kind of stuff. And yeah, just have fun. Ravnica Allegiance looks like so much fun right now. I can't wait to kind of jump into this format. Guilds of Ravnica was a ton of fun. Ravnica Allegiance just looks like a lot more fun as well. Man, they're just knocking it out of the park with these sets. They're doing really well at being able to kind of keep it kind of consistent. My only thing so far is Skewer the Critics is going to be a card that's really scaring me about standard, and I really hope it doesn't format or warp the format around mono red aggro. I really, really hope it doesn't. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I love you all, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.